So right now it is recording. Of course, none of you are speaking, so you won't hear yourselves, but it is hearing me, and it will record everything I draw on here. Right now it's recording this red dot moving around, but there's nothing being written, so it's not going to be recording that. I always tell you what we are going to do in a unit. This is what we are going to do. We are going to go through everything to do with measuring stuff. So we will begin with the measurement around the world. It's based on two systems. Do you know what they are? Kathleen. The metric system is what everybody says. The metric system isn't its actual name, but yes, that is what we call it. Does anybody know the actual name of the metric system? Just out of curiosity. No? Fair enough. We all know what the metric system is, though, yes? And that's what we use where? Who uses the metric system? Duncan? Everywhere but the US. I think there are 3 countries left in the world that do not use the metric system officially. We have been metric in Canada since 1970. And yet still, if I ask you your height, what are you going to tell me your height in? Feet and inches. If I ask you your weight, what are you going to tell me your weight in? Pounds. Even though for the past 47 years, Canada has been metric. Unless, of course, you go to Quebec. If you go to Quebec and tell someone your height in inches, they will go, quoi? If they're French. There's people in Quebec that aren't French. But they will go, quoi? Because they do not use imperial measurements at all. So yes, metric is one of the systems we use, but that is not its real name. Its real name is Système International, which is, of course, French. And there's an accent somewhere in there, but I can't remember exactly where it is, so I'm not going to draw it. And I can't remember if it's an accent grave or an accent aigu. So I think it's an accent grave, and I think it's right there. But don't put it, is it? Yeah? Who's French immersion? Were you French immersion from Moet? No? From where? Where'd you do French immersion? My French is bad, but I love to speak it. So French immersion kids always laugh at me. Don't hurt my feelings. You can't hurt my feelings. I love speaking in French, even though my French is awful. If any of you know Helena in the 11th grade, she would get so mad at me because my French is so bad and her French is so good. And I would speak in French. She'd be like, your French is awful. I'm like, oui! Très mal! See, he's laughing at me. Who else in here really speaks French? You can be honest. Really? Only 2 of you? Usually there's a bunch of kids that come from Moet in grade 10 that were in French immersion. And they come here and then they laugh at my French. Okay, Système International, invented in France during the French Revolution, which you, of course, studied in the 9th grade. Does anybody know why it was invented? This is where I turn math into social studies. It's very IBE. Does anybody know why this system was invented? No one? Awesome. We'll come back to that in a minute. What's the other system? What do the Americans use? Imperial. The imperial system. And what are some measurements in both? Well, in metric system, you've got kilos, centis, all that stuff, right? kg, centimeter, kilometer, all that. And in imperial, what do we got? What are some measurements that we use in imperial? We've already talked about 2 of them. Feet, inches, what else? Miles, nice one. Yards, excellent. So everyone's cool with that, right? We're all aware of both of them. Now, because of where we live, we really need to be able to work in both of them. Especially if you're going to be doing anything to do with construction. Not necessarily for a job, but if you plan to have a house, like you don't plan to live in a cardboard box under the bridge, If you plan to have a house, everything that gets done to your house is going to be done in imperial measurements because we live attached to the United States. If you lived in Europe, your house would not be measured in square feet. It would be measured in square meters. If you bought gutter for your house, it would be measured in meters, not yards. Everywhere in the world except the United States and like 2 other countries. I can't remember what the countries are, but they're like little tiny countries. It's like 1 country in Africa and 1 country in Asia. I can't remember what they are. I will look them up and let you know, because this type of thing bothers me that it has fallen out of my head, because I knew it 4 months ago, the last time I taught this, and now it is gone from my head. It's like gone. My mother-in-law over the summer forgot the word for garlic. I was like, Carla, do you have any garlic? What is that? Turns out she had a brain tumor. I know, right? She's okay now. Everyone relax. But she did forget the word for garlic. And that was what made us realize that she had something wrong with her. Anyways, so the imperial system, what feet? What's it based on? Why do we call a foot a foot? It's based on feet. Exactly. The imperial system is based on body parts. Why is that stupid? Body parts are different, right? If we were measuring square feet by my feet, I have little tiny wuss feet. I'm surprised I can stand up. Right? I got size 8.5 feet. I'm a dude. It's crazy. I bet nobody in here has feet that small. Well, maybe some of the girls do. My wife has canoe feet. We can share shoes. We don't very much because we have different taste. But we can. So, body parts. That's stupid, right? Who do you think chose how big a foot was? Who do you think was in charge? Do you think it changed? Was a foot everywhere? Is that a foot? In every country of the world, is that a foot? That's not a foot? What would you call it, Tavleen? I call it a foot. It's the thing at the end of my leg. I don't know. You got a funny name for it? But it's not a foot, is it? Yeah, you know how to answer it. It's a foot, but it's not a foot, right? It's a foot in that it's the thing at the end of my leg, but it is not a foot in measurement, is it? But at one point, that was a foot in measurement. Why? Because I'm in charge of this room. I tell you, this is a foot. So what do you guys all have to do? When you measure something, you got to know how long that is, yeah? And that's how you measure. Now, Mr. DeVries is 6 foot 4 inches tall. You think his feet are tiny like this? So when you go next door to Mr. DeVries, hey, I got 10 feet of lumber for you. He's going to measure it and say, what, more or less? Less. He'd say, no, you don't. You got 8 feet of lumber for me. And you're going to be like, but it's 10 feet. I cut it down on my farm right next door, and it's 10 feet of lumber. Ask the guy that measures around my house. That's me. That's 10 feet of lumber. You go take it to sell it to DeVries, how much is he going to pay you for it? Less, because it's only 8 feet of lumber in his country, isn't it? Why? Because I got small feet. He's got big feet. Understand why it's stupid? And that's what happened in France. To get from the farm to Paris, you had to go through like 14 different little countries. And every time you went through, you paid taxes based on how much stuff you had. You're a farmer. You got to pay taxes to Lauren because she's in charge of that little part of France. Then you got to pay taxes to Soupman because he's in charge of that little part of France. Then you got to pay taxes to CJ because he's in charge of that little part of France. And then you get to the nice part of France where I'm in charge, Paris. And every time you go through, you pay taxes. Usually based on how much you're carrying. His feet are different than her feet, which are different than his feet, which are different than his feet, which are different than my feet. Very confusing, yes? So the French people invented the System International and said everybody uses these measurements. So it was actually invented for taxation, not for measuring anything. Neat, hey? How many of you knew that? How many of you are just saying that you didn't know that so I would feel good about myself? Oh, you guys are so nice to me. Now, next question is, what's it based on? If this is based on body parts, which of course is stupid, right? What's inch in French? Do you know? Pouce. Pouce, which is thumb, because an inch is a thumb. Except, what if you're Shaquille O'Neal and your thumb is that long? Right? Okay. What are some other body part measurements we use? How do we measure horses? Hands. Again, makes very little sense, right? I got little tiny sausage fingers. That horse is 28 hands tall, right? And along comes Shaq. Horse is 5 hands. KFC used to have a basketball with Shaquille O'Neal's handprint on it. It was like all the way around the basketball. It looked like the Raptors symbol. And then I would put my hand on it as a grown-up. And it was like, you know, when your little kid, your little nephew puts his hand on your hand. And you're like, oh, it's so cute. And then you crush his hand because you're mean. Not that any of you guys would have ever done that. But when I was a little kid, I did stuff like that. All right. Whew. Does anybody know what the metric system is based on? 0. Excellent. 0 what? You're kind of close. So 1,000 kilometers is 0.
No, it goes up.
Up from 0 by what? Tens, absolutely. The metric system is based on tens, just like counting. Because even in France, they count in tens. And it makes so much more sense, doesn't it? When I have 10 cents, when I have 1 cent, I get a dime to get 10, then I get $1. 10, 10, 10. When I have body parts, 12 inches is a foot. 12, because we count in 12s, right? Of course we don't. We count in tens. All right. Good job, everyone. Now, first homework question. How long's a meter? Don't answer. How long is a meter? That's your first homework question. And I'll tell you right now, your first guess right now is wrong. No offense, Tevlin. That's your first piece of homework. You may want to put a star by it or something. So, these guys, MMCM, MKM, System International or Imperial? SI, System International. Absolutely correct. Does anyone know what a referent is? Does anybody see a word that they know in the word referent? Refer, reference, right? So a referent is what we use to guess at a distance. So if something, we all know what a millimeter is, right? Right? You grab your ruler, it's got millimeters on it, right? But how many of you are carrying a ruler in your pocket at any given moment? Nobody. Do you ever need to measure stuff? Ever? Possibly? Maybe? It's a good idea to have reference, which is understanding distances without actually measuring them, yes? Like this room is 30 cubic liters high. No, it's not. That's what you say because you have no idea what it is, because you have no reference. So, what would you say would be a good thing to use to give you a guess at the length of a millimeter? Something that you would have upon your person at any given moment. Is there a right or wrong answer here? No, because it's something that you could use. But there are wrong answers that you could give me, right? Like you would not say the thickness of your pinky is a millimeter, would you? You could say that, but that would prove to me that you don't know how long a millimeter is, doesn't it? So what would be something that one could use? Anything. that would be approximately a millimeter? Nobody? Nobody knows how little a millimeter is? That's about right, Duncan. What's something that's about that long? That. I like to say it's the thickness of a dime. Now that's a bit of a stupid one. Why? Because would we ever measure anything in millimeters? You wouldn't, would you? Right? If you're going to do the 100-meter race in the Olympics, do you say, I'm doing the 1,000,000 millimeter race? I live 37 kilometers from school. I live 37,000 meters from school. Do you do that? No, of course not. So we're going to leave the relationship section blank for a reason. What's something that's about a centimeter? Yeah, pinky width. Nice job, Jenna. A pinky width. Now, centimeters, we sometimes measure stuff in, yeah? So it's not a bad idea. Now, meter. What's about a meter? What? Your arm length? Both arms. That's how tall you are. You're absolutely right there. You've been taller than a meter for a long time, though, Lauren. But one arm is not bad. Yeah? Huh? From where to where? Oh, I see. I couldn't see your other hand. It was hiding behind Tavleen. Okay. What's wrong with doing it that way? Yeah, it's a really rough estimate because if you don't move the same, right? So, but again, the whole point of a referent is an estimate, right? Duncan, you're not going to say that this room is 500 meters tall, are you? Of course not. You could say that, but that would prove that you have no idea how long a meter is, wouldn't it? Okay, so Lauren says, she said 2 arms, but that would be pretty tall. That would be more than a meter. I like 1 arm. Anything else that you could think of? I like about a step for distance, because we usually use meters to measure distances, right? Height of your desk, yeah? That's pretty good. That'd be another good one. And you actually just gave me away for something we're going to do later, Max. Well done. And a kilometer. How long is a kilometer? Again, we're guessing. Is there anything we could use on our person that is a kilometer long? Of course not. So we can't use body parts as a referent for something that long. But what could we use? What are other things we use to measure? This is always how this lesson goes. What are other things we use to measure? Fatima?
You could calculate the number of meters in a kilometer.
Yeah, sure. You could say it's about 1,000 steps. When I was doing the Tough Mudder, I actually counted my runs, my steps. And for the first 3 kilometers, I did 2,994 steps. I was that close to being a meter per step. I was very proud of myself. But then, of course, I was tired and I had to start walking. Because 3 kilometers is a long way to run, especially on a mountain. I'm pretty fat to do the Tough Mudder. Other people were like, did you train? No. Whatever. I fell on the monkey bars. I didn't complete that. I was stupid. I used gloves. That was dumb. The monkey bars at Tough Mudder go up like this. And they put them in at 18 kilometers in. So after you've been running around on a mountain for 18 kilometers, they make you do those kind of monkey bars over water. That 1,000 people have been in the water is so disgusting. Ugh, it was gross. But anyway, if you feel you would like to do the Tough Mudder, you can talk to me about it. But I don't think they'll let you guys. You got to be 16. My son wants to do it. I take him to do little ones. He likes it because he gets all mucky and gross. There's a little 5K one in Chilliwack that I let him do. Okay, so we're covered that. Now, what relationship over here, I've left that blank for a reason. Because the System International is based always on a base measurement. Now, these are all measurements of distance, right? Now, you guys aren't stupid. We measure all kinds of things other than distance, yeah? We measure weight, we measure volume, right? We measure temperature, we measure all kinds of stuff. But the System International, whatever you're measuring, it has a base measurement. So what here is the base measurement for distance? Meters. This is our base. And then the good thing about the System International, the SI system, is everything goes from there. It's so easy, and yet people have difficulty, and those idiots down there don't want to change over to it. Centimeter, centi. What does that mean? Per cent. How many cents in a dollar? 100. So centimeter is 1/100th of the base. So in distance, if a meter is a base, 1/100th of it is a centimeter, right? In weight, what do you think the base is? Or mass, I should say. Tavleen? Grams. So what would be 1/100th of a gram? Centigram. Do we use centigrams? No, we don't. But they still exist because that's how the metric system works. Do you understand me? What is the base measurement for volume? Liter. So what would be 1/100th of a liter? A centiliter, which they do use everywhere but here. We don't use centiliters, but Europe does. If you get a Europe can of pop, it will say 33 CL on it. 33 centiliters. If you've been to Europe, you know that. Okay, so does it matter what we're measuring? No, the rules are the same no matter what. If the base measurement is a Kaboobly-Heinz, then what is 1/100th of a Kaboobly-Heinz? A centikaboobly-Heinz. Do you understand? It doesn't matter what it is. It follows the same rules. That's why the metric system is the sensible system. And that's why 137 countries in the world use it. So what would the milli one be? 1/1000th of the base. Now you guys are smart kids. You notice that 1/100th, 1/1000th, there's something missing in there, isn't there? Yeah, there's no 10. We're going to talk about that in a minute. These are the common ones. That's why I have them, because in Canada, we use milli, centi, and kilo. Right? But everywhere else in the world, they fill in those holes, which we're going to do in a moment. Some of you, like Duncan just mentioned one of them, a decimeter. We never use it. Pardon? Decameter and hectometer. Absolutely correct. We don't use them. But they do exist, so I'm going to talk about them in a minute. So obviously, a kilo is 1,000 times instead of 1/1000. Everybody good? Now, as I just said, Duncan there told us about some differences. Now, you guys should have a little bit of blank space at the bottom of your paper, yeah? Okay, let's take care of that because Duncan just brought it up right now, so let's deal with that right now. There's the base is in the middle for the metric system. The next one up is times 10, and it is what we call a deca, like decade. So 10 meters is a decameter. 10 centimeters, or 10 liters is a decaliter. 10 grams, decagram. Everybody cool? The next one is one that we do use sometimes, times 100, and that is a hecto. Now, we don't usually use that as a measurement, do we? Like, I'm not doing a 1 hectometer race, am I? We say 100 meters. But we do use hecto somewhere. Have any of you heard that term? In the summertime when BC is on fire. Hectares for area. A hectare is how we use that. And it's 100 meters by 100 meters. So it's a square that is 10,000 square meters. That's a hectare. That's how we use hecto in our language or in our parlance. And then the next one is times 1,000, and it is kilo. Now, thanks to computers, you guys know the next one's going up, don't you? What's after kilo? Kilobytes. After kilobytes, megabytes, then gigabytes, then terabytes. We can go on, right? It also goes the other way. Now, Duncan told us one of them was, he gave us the first one, divide by 10 to get deci, like decimal. Deci is we divide by 10. So 1 meter has 10 decimeters in it. And then the next one down there is centi, which is one that we use. That's divide by 100. And then the last one, again, we use it, is milli, and that's divide by 1,000. And we can go further that way. Does anybody know the next one after milli? It's micrometer, micrometer. Depends on how you say it. And after micro is nano. You guys have probably heard the term nanosecond, but probably not nanometer, unless you've done some biology and you were looking through the microscope and measuring things that were nanometers long. And then after nano is pico, and then I don't know what's next. Everybody cool with that? But what happens, no matter what name we give it, it's just one more zero. Everybody cool? So if I told you that I had 5.34 meters, you can now go both directions, can't you? Right? How many decameters is that? It's going to be 0.534, right? And it's weird because this means it's 10 times, but what do I actually do to the decimal place? Move it the other way, right? So this would become 0.534 decameters, D-A-M. What is it going to be in hectometers? 0.0534 hectometers, HM. And what's it going to be in kilometers? 0.0534 km. Everybody cool? And when we go the other way, even though we're dividing, what do we do with the decimal? We move it right because we're multiplying, because the number's getting bigger, even though the distances are getting smaller. Does everybody understand that? So this is going to be 53.4 decimeters, which is just dm, 534 centimeters, and 5,340 millimeters. Is everybody cool with metric? Now, of course, you already know this because you grew up with the metric system. You would think that you could handle that if you were learning it new, wouldn't you? All you do is move the decimal place. Can you multiply and divide by 10? Yeah! Well, then why don't you go to the metric system? Because it's stupid. Oh, okay. So, we're done with metric. It's funny, when I go to America, I hang out with some guys where I go surfing, and they work in a brewery, and they do everything in metric. But then when people ask them about it, they have to convert it all back to gallons and pints for the people that they're talking to. Then when I go in, they're like, oh my God, it's so nice to talk to a Canadian who actually understands liters. Anyways, so then imperial, inch, foot, yard, mile. They make no sense, do they? Right? Is there a base? No, there isn't. Any one of them could be the base, couldn't it? There is no base because it makes no sense. What one do you want to make a base? It wouldn't matter, would it? What would you say is the base of the imperial system? You want to say it's a foot? Okay, no problem. Let's call the foot the base. Well, then the inch is what to a foot? 1/10 would be awesome, wouldn't it? But it's not. What is it? 1/12. Because that's a fraction we use all the time, isn't it? We should divide by 12. Why not? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I guess they're taking off my shoes. So, dumb. What's a yard? Everyone knows. It's football. You need 10 yards to get a first down. What's a yard? Somebody knows. It's 3 feet. That makes sense because inches go divided by 12, and then we're going to multiply by 3. That's logical, right? It's 3 feet. Or 36 inches. And then miles. Miles, probably 1,000 yards, yeah? That would make good sense, right? Does anybody know what a mile is? Take a guess. 1,600 meters is about a mile, yeah? Yeah, you're right. In yards, it's 1,760. That's a good, nice number to use, right? I can multiply that in my head. It's 1,760 yards, which is 5,280 feet. That's a good way to measure stuff, right? Because that's how we count everything. Now, the reference don't matter, right? I already told you that a thumb is what the French call an inch. This part of your thumb, right here. Your pouce. A foot, duh, it's a foot. A yard. The yard I like, because a yard is about a step, because a yard is approximately a meter. And then a mile is about 1.5 kilometers. Everybody cool? Let's do some actual stuff with this. Turn the page over, and your job for the next 5 minutes is to please recognize that word. What does that word say? Estimate. Is there a right or wrong answer? No. Your job is to fill that in. That's all. And you have one piece of homework. What's your homework? How long is a meter? And remember, what's wrong? What's the wrong answer to that question? 100 centimeters is the wrong answer. Which means, because it's the metric system, what else is wrong? 10 decimeters, 1,000 millimeters, 0.1 of a decameter. All those are wrong. So you have 2 bits of homework. That and to tell me what a meter is. And that's all you have to do today. That's it. Normally, of course, you would have way longer than that, right? But we spent the first bunch of the class going over that first warm-up thing. Okay. Normally, I would not talk to the bell like this. Cool? Okay. Go. You can talk with each other. You don't have to be quiet and do this like a test. You can. When somebody says, "Well, the width of my locker is obviously 7 feet." Goof. Okay. By the way, I have measured all these things, except every single giraffe in the world and every single ant.